If you're interested in working with me and having me coach you through all the tools that I talk about here on Exmormonology, head over to my website at amyloganlife.com and you can find more information there. You can also email me at amyloganlife@gmail.com. Exmormonology, episode 11. All right, welcome. How are you guys doing this week? How was last week and the residual effect? If you haven't listened to that, I really recommend you go back and listen to that one. It's a good one. Today, we're going to talk about something called the manual, a tool that I use with my clients all the time. But first, I want to know how you're doing. You know, I'm in a lot of post-Mormon groups and I can see all the different phases coming through every day as I read the different posts people share and what they're venting about, what they're going through, even good things, good things that have happened to them. And it just reminds me of all the different phases of this. So if you are in a haze right now and you are in the space where you're just freshly going through this, I want you to know that it's going to get better. Keep going. That's my best advice. It's going to feel like things are just kind of hitting you, coming out of the blue, and you're just going to have to keep going. But if you're listening to this podcast and you're in the phase of your faith crisis, maybe this will help you a little bit more. And something funny that my fiance and I talk about sometimes, and we've actually been together for 10 years, so this will make the story even funnier as far as I'm concerned. I mean, we started talking this way probably 9 years ago. Something good would happen to us or to him or to me or something. And we just I'd look over it and I'd be like, we must be living right. And it's just funny because I think there is this fear, right, that when you leave the church, bad things are going to start happening to you, right? It's like, but if I don't do all the things I promised I would do, and I think that fear keeps you in doubt for a long time. That fear of something bad happening because you're not going to have, quote unquote, the Holy Ghost with you anymore. Or, we've just been indoctrinated to think that if you leave the church, you leave the safety of the church and you go out into the big bad world, that bad things are going to happen to you. So I want you to start adopting the phrase, I must be living right. Because you can be doing all sorts of things in your life, no longer subscribing to Mormonism. And guess what? There's still going to be goodness in your life. But guess what? There's also the flip side of that. You're still going to have hard days. You're going to still have frustration with family members. You're still going to wonder if you're doing things right? You're still going to get mad. That doesn't mean that life is over because you left the church. It's actually just beginning. So start adopting that phrase, and it just will add a little humor to your life, and it will remind you that it's all okay. You are having human experience. You're evolving and growing, and some days are hard and some days are amazing. All right. All right. I want to jump into this concept of the manual. I think it's really going to help you as you are navigating this space and you're dealing with all sorts of things. If you've been with me since the beginning, you know that I am a big believer that you are 100% in charge of your emotions no matter what. You have control over your emotions when you start to manage your mind. Your thoughts and story around your emotions will always be what fuels your fire, right? So like if you're getting triggered, quote unquote, about something, it's because of the thoughts that are running through your head. And because our brains are so tricky, they like to gather all the evidence to prove whatever thought you're thinking is true, right? And it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Today, I want to talk to you about the manual. When you find yourself getting triggered, know you can turn that page. And what we're going to talk about today is going to help you be able to turn that page quicker. At any time, you do not need to make a circumstance meaning any more than it needs to. All right. And I'm going to give you some specific examples about that. When we are in this space of our post-Mormon life and we're figuring life out now without the church, most of us are still surrounded by our Mormon family, right? We've talked a lot about that. And it's totally normal to think that we want our family to see our point of view and we get stuck there, right? Like I've said before, we want to be heard, we want to be loved, and we want to be understood. I think those are some human characteristics we all want in our life. We want our friends and family to see our point of view, to see that we've studied, to see that we've thought this through, to not treat us like the black sheep of the family. We want our family to ask why we've left the church. We want our Mormon family to not be so Mormon-y around us, right? This is where I want you to shift a little bit. And this is going to take some practice, but I want you to start having reasonable expectations for how you respond and act around your family instead of thinking they need to do anything different. And this is where the manual comes in. So, you know how the church has volumes of manuals? Everything from the church handbook, right? They've just made some changes there. I haven't decided if I'm going to go down that avenue. I think there's been a lot of talk about the changes to the church manual and code of instructions of how they deal with certain things. But every business has manuals. Obviously, the church has manuals. I want you to think about the unwritten manuals you have for the people in your life. All right? The concept of the manual is it's basically an instruction guide that we have for the people in our lives and how we want them to behave so we feel better. Now, the thing with the manual is we generally don't tell the people that this is the manual I have for you and I need you to behave a certain way and then I'll feel better. Okay, we just have these, and then when someone violates our manual or violates our expectation, we get all bent out of shape, right? It seems like it's perfectly justified to have expectations of other people, but this can be really damaging to your emotional happiness and your kind of baseline living in life. All right. Now, really, this is huge. This can be very life-changing because so many of us believe that we would be happier if someone in our life would change. All right. So you've just come out of the Mormon church. You're still kind of finding your footing. Maybe you're 10 years out, and it still gets to you sometimes. When we think someone else should do something different so we feel better, we are completely handing our power over to those other people, whoever it is. Okay, this is never true. People don't cause your emotions. We are always in charge of how we're thinking and feeling. Always. Other people's behavior has no impact on us emotionally until we think about it, interpret it, and choose to make it mean something. I'll say that one more time. Other people's behavior has no impact on us emotionally until we think about it, interpret it, and choose to make it mean something. So when you can start looking at the relationships in your life in terms of the manual, I'm going to give you a few things here in a minute about how you can start seeing it a little more clearly. But this way, when you start thinking of the relationships in terms of the manual, you'll start to be able to see how you want people in your life to show up differently so you can feel better. And when you even phrase it that way, doesn't it kind of make you go, what? All right. I don't think we think about it this way most of the time. But listen, the good news is you get to feel however you want, whenever you want, and always. No one in your life needs to change their behavior so you can feel better. I know. We want them to. But think about that. When you start to practice this and think about it on the regular, you are taking your power back. And I've talked about this before. This is you taking charge of your life. This one tool can help you see how your brain is causing you pain. So, for example, if you want to see when you're running a manual, I call it running a manual on someone. Anytime you say, Mom should, he shouldn't be doing this, the church shouldn't be, or, the church should do things differently. I just wish he would. Okay, those are examples of times when you're running a manual on someone. That means whatever they're doing, you want them to do it differently. But we don't think it so we'll feel better. But think about that. That's what's happening. So, like I said, this week as you go about your life, start paying attention to how you're running manuals on people. For example, let's say you receive an email from your mom linking you to an article about the church. All right. And it just sets your brain afire. Why would my mom send me these articles? She knows I don't go to church anymore. All right. That's one example. Let's say you're invited to say the prayer at family dinner when you've clearly told your family you're out of the church. You may have even clearly said, I don't pray anymore. Or maybe you haven't clearly said that, but in your head, you're thinking they should just know this. All right. When you see these things happen, your brain will most likely go down the pathway of gathering all the other thoughts, all the other stories of all the things, let's say your dad has done in the past, and it literally fuels that fire. And before you know it, your brain is just running amok and you're mad. Okay, but then what happens is we blame the other person for that, right? So oftentimes that's not the only thing that happens. Let's say you're asked to say the prayer at the family dinner, and instead of just saying no thank you or no I'm not going to do that, right? You either say it begrudgingly, maybe, or you don't, and somehow you get out of it. But then you, like I said, you've gathered all the thoughts, you've made this big story in your mind, and then you go tell everybody about it. Right. And this is human behavior too. We want to be validated in what we're thinking. But instead of just saying no thank you and moving on, we've created this whole story to gather all the things dad did to us or said to me, 20 years ago. And now we're adding it to this one story about the prayer today. You see that? Because our brain just like goes, oh, I'm going to gather all the things. See how this makes me so mad? So then you're reinforcing it, right? You get reinforcements when you tell people and everyone's like, yeah, yeah. And then you feel better for a minute until the next time you're at family dinner and it happens again. Okay. Can you see how that type of thinking is going to keep you in a very negative space? I think too, we get frustrated with other people when we haven't set up boundaries. And we're going to for sure talk about how to do that. But today I want you to just really think about how this happens. So because our brain's so tricky and it goes on the gathering mission to prove your point that dad should never have asked me to say a prayer at this dinner. All right. You've created the drama in the moment. Is that a hard pill to swallow? I know, but listen, this is about you taking charge of your life without anyone else having to change. You're making decisions on how you want your life to be. So that means you get to start managing your mind around that. We want other people to behave differently. Like, for example, not ask me to say a prayer at a family dinner so I feel better and I don't feel awkward. And that I feel like they're understanding me and that they're taking my position seriously. Okay, can you see that? Instead, what happens, our primitive brain, the same brain that has kept our caveman ancestors safe and part of the tribe, kicks in and we go down that whole rabbit hole of feeling lost and disconnected from tribe. Now, you're already going through a lot of that because you've left the church, especially if you're in the new, beginning stages of life post-faith crisis. But what I want you to see is what's happening is we have a prefrontal cortex that is the part of our brain where we can make educated decisions. We think things through. We decide ahead of time how we want to be and show up in the world. And then we have our primitive brain in the back that just kind of goes crazy when things go amok. All of this coaching that I'm trying to help you with is giving your prefrontal cortex, that part of your brain, a more structured way of dealing with thoughts and feelings that come on. All right. You get to decide ahead of time how triggered you're going to be about something. I want you to think about the last time you felt misunderstood or not listened to. Was it because you would feel better if the person you were talking to would just do or say XYZ? Really think about that. How do you feel when someone wants you to behave in a certain way so that they feel better? All right. So if we go back to the prayer at the family dinner, that's exactly what's happening. Dad's going through his own set of thoughts and feelings based on you leaving the church. So he's kind of thinking, if Melanie says the dinner prayer, I'm going to feel better. Like he might even be having thoughts like, maybe that means she's coming back to church. If I can get her to say the prayer, maybe she's going to feel the Spirit, right? If I can get her to say the prayer, it will give me hope that this is just a phase. Okay, so do you see that? Like dad's having his own thoughts about you. You're having your own thoughts about what dad's thinking because he asked you to say the prayer. All right, and then your brain goes bonkers and makes this big, huge story about it. Now, you aren't responsible for what's going on in dad's head. Dad's having his own thoughts and feelings about this. He gets to manage it. This is just one way of him wanting you to behave differently so he feels better. Okay, can you see that? So sometimes it's good when we can look at the other person and go, why would they do that? Instead of just getting so mad that they're doing it. This is why I'm always asking you to stay really curious. It's like, why would dad ask me to say the prayer? He knows I don't believe anymore. All right. And what that does is it gets you at the human connection level, right? Dad wants you to do something so he feels better. You have every right to say no to that because you're in charge of yourself. No, thank you. And move on. You get to decide, what do you want to make that mean? What do you want to make it happen? How big do you want this moment to be? I think what happens is when we run manuals on people, we don't even know we're doing it. I always give this example with my clients, like my expectation for my birthday. Okay. I want my birthday to be off the charts. It's like the one day or weekend or week a month that I want to be special. I want to feel good. I want to feel like I'm being, it's my birthday. It's a big deal. With my boyfriend, I would not tell him my expectations and then get mad if he didn't meet them. Okay. So it's a manual I have about how I want to be on my birthday. And then I just keeping it in my head thinking he should just know to do all of these things. Okay, so this isn't even church related. This is just another example of how the manual might be showing up in your life. Now, you have every right to make requests of something you want, and that other person in your life has also the right to say, no, well, I don't want to do birthdays like that. And then you manage your mind around it. Okay. But if I have all these expectations of something I want in my life or in my relationship, or at my job or wherever, and I don't tell anyone and I just stir and get mad because it's my birthday and no one did anything special for me. And I didn't even communicate that I want something special done for me. All right. That whole expectation makes me mad, right? My boyfriend didn't do this for my birthday, right? Now, over the years, I've learned to just say what I want. And then he's like, of course, right? Sometimes we can set up what we want in life and then people can accommodate it, but not everyone's going to accommodate everything you want in life. So really what I want you to just start noticing is, how are your emotions being affected when people don't do what you want them to do? And this is really subtle. We think that if everyone just would behave and do as they're told, it's going to be okay. Well, guess what? This is life. This is real. This is like life just doesn't just roll out that red carpet just perfectly for us. So if you're really wanting to learn how to manage your mind, you have to start paying attention to when you quote unquote get triggered about something. And then ask yourself, why do I need that person to behave differently? Why do I need my Mormon family to not be so Mormon-y? Okay. They made the choice to stay in the church. I know we've addressed this before, but you made the choice to leave and now you're frustrated. I totally get that, you guys. And I've said before too, it's okay to be frustrated and angry, but you know when it's kind of taken on a life of its own. And if you do want to keep showing up and you do want to keep having relationships with your family, your only job is to manage your mind. Your family gets to still do what they're going to do, and you get to figure out how you want to show up in the world and not have your emotions be at the mercy of everybody else. I understand that we all kind of have a basic premise that everyone should be kind and honest and lovely, right? I think we get stuck though when people don't meet that expectation, and then we just kind of lose our minds. All right. We think that if this person in my life would just meet my needs, we will all be happy. But the beautiful part of life is you get to be a happy human no matter what. I mean, the best relationships are when you have two happy people and they come together and they're happy and healthy and communicate well and get to enjoy life together. The line from Jerry Maguire where Tom Cruise comes in and he says, "You complete me." All right. It's this happens so subtly we don't even realize the expectations we're putting on other people to make us happy and to complete us. How much better in life is it if we are complete and then we go have relationships with other people? All right. So that's another way to look at the manual. We blame people for what we're feeling all the time. Turn on the news, something happens, and then all of a sudden we're feeling shitty because so-and-so said this or this happened over here. Okay, we get to manage our mind even around things like that. Another thing we don't want to do is get so wrapped up in these manuals we've created for other people that we think they have to abide by them. Now, really process that. Like we have these manuals for in our head. That doesn't mean that we have a manual for how we think something should be and that other people have to abide by that. All right. You get to make requests that someone does something. Maybe you say to your husband, it would really be great if you could take out the trash. Okay. If they don't do that, you don't have to then turn it into, well, this is what my manual says you're supposed to do as my husband. Okay. You still get to manage your mind and you get to go take the trash out. Right. Now, the flip side of that also is that if over time you feel like you like your reasons for not staying with the person or being friends with the person, that's a whole different line of thinking. But really examining how you are applying the manuals to people in your life and they don't even know that you're doing it. The biggest point I'm trying to make here is that usually we do this, we create these manuals or lines of expectations in our head for how people should behave and we don't even tell them. As a grown up, you get to do whatever you want in this life. That's the perk of being a grown up, right? Most of you listening are adults. Now, that doesn't mean you get to pick the consequence for behavior. If you want to go out and rob a bank, you can try to do that, but there will be consequences for your behavior. So there are times in life where there are consequences. When you're raising children, you're going to have a manual for how you think your children should behave. That's the funny part of parenting, though. They rarely abide by it. But there are consequences. If you're raising a kid and they don't do this, they don't, I don't know, whatever your expectation is, you're teaching them to make their bed every morning. They don't do that. You put a consequence in place for them, right? Let's say you're a boss and you create manuals for your employees. There are different protocol for how you would deal with an employee and a child, let's say, than how you're dealing with your parents or your best friend or your significant other. Okay, those are different types of relationships. Let's keep that in mind here. I just think the biggest takeaway I want you to have from this is just start noticing when you're running a manual on someone, because for most of us, we don't even realize that we're doing it. And once you are aware, that's when you can start to make change. Okay, awareness will always be the catalyst to change no matter what it is in your life you're wanting to change. So just start paying attention to who you're running manuals on, and you can pick that out really easy when you can see who in your life bugs you the most. Okay. And that's just a good indicator that, like, oh, I want them to do something different so I feel better. All right. This is about being responsible for your emotions and knowing that every moment of every day, you get to be the boss of those emotions. Okay. You're the boss of what goes on in your brain. And just because you have an unwritten, unspoken manual for someone, that doesn't mean that they have to abide by it. Okay. Manage your mind around those thoughts, you guys. This is how we're doing it. Each week, I'm kind of giving you more coaching around how you can start getting your emotional power back, because that's what it's all about. When you are at the whim of how everyone else is behaving and thinking and what they're saying, no wonder your emotions are like all over the place, up and down, and you feel like you're just very unstable emotionally. This is how you start to take your emotional power back. All right. So re-listen to this episode if you need to. There's a lot of good nuggets in here you can take away to start managing your emotional life, because that's what this is about. We have this one life. Let's make it the best one we can. All right, you guys, I'll see you next week.